Okay,
There we go.
we are live. Awesome. Yay.
How have you been?
Hold on a second.
All
Oh man,
right.
so good to see you, my friend. It feels like it's
It's
been
good to see you.
forever.
It
Oh
has.
my
It's
goodness.
been, when was the last time we did one?
Oh, I honestly can't
I, w-
remember.
I want to say it was like 6 months ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say 8, but yeah, 6 to 8 months, I think.
It's
It's been a
it's
while. It's
time.
been too long.
Yes, it has.
Oh man. Yeah. So I'm super excited. So let's just jump right in, and with introductions, we'll get the formalities out of the way, and then I'll create the space and we can open up the field to the conversation. How does that sound? Sound good?
Sounds good to me. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Alrighty. So my name is Natasha Soul. I'm an energy therapist and a cosmic channel. I work with a number of different beings, Arcturians, Palladians, just bringing information to the collective, which I so enjoy. And this is my amazing friend, Alan Mitchell of Golden Ratio. What is it? Golden Ratio Media?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. And we discovered each other. We found each other, I should say. We found each
Mm-hmm.
other as we're both consider ourselves blue avian starseeds. And we've traveled the astral field together. And yeah, I'm so very honored to have you on today, Alan. Is there anything you'd like to add about
Uh,
yourself?
yeah, I'm just, your average guy who serves as a mirror for the collective. I've been spending a lot of time exploring the human condition and really applying what I'm learning to what we're experiencing. And just outside of that, I'm an artist, a photographer, a videographer. I just enjoy being creative, but this has been my mainstay. My main call right now is to speak, and I was called to speak today.
Awesome. Well, calling it has been. And so with that, I'm going to just jump in and set the space. Make sure we're in a really clear space and holding today's intention for the highest benefit, the highest outcome for everyone who's joining on the call, whether in this present moment or in a future present moment. And just surrounding the space in a sphere of white light and calling in the guides of the highest light to join us in on this call. I'm actually going to also, I've been feeling the Octurians as well as the Palladians. I usually work with them the most. So inviting them to join in as well if they have a message that they would like to convey to the collective. And surrounding this space of white light with an energy of the golden frequency of protection and angelic guidance. Thank you so much. And our higher selves coming in as well. And with that, wonderful. So we'll just jump right in, Alan. My friend, I really didn't prepare any questions for you. I'm sure I will have questions that come up, but
You will.
I didn't really prepare any questions for you because I just wanted to like hand the floor over to you and get kind of your sense of what the current energies are and what direction you think we're headed towards.
Well, that's the main reason why I was called to speak. The last time we had this conversation about March energies, I rewatched that video, gosh, probably 3 times in the last 2 days or so, just kind of not preparation, but just revisiting the thought process that we were both sharing, because we were talking about a lot of topics around the importance of March, right? In terms of energy, in terms of significance of events, the frequency of events for March are just insane. And when you look at what we're experiencing right now, there's no other way to look at it except for to see the patterns, right? Like we're facing a war,
Right.
and wars have traditionally, or at least the onset, the pre-staging of war has always taken place in March throughout history. March is actually named after Mars, which is the god of war. So there's a lot to be said about that. The Ides of March, which are coming up on the 15th, that was the day that Caesar was assassinated in the Senate. There's just a whole host of really interesting things. So today, March 10th, 1862 was the first issue of government paper money, 5s, 10s, and 20s. We're facing seemingly an economic collapse, or at the very least, the death of the dollar around the same time now. And I don't see coincidences, you know? And so I started digging through all of those little earmarks of history and looking at the patterns and then applying it to what we're experiencing right now. And like I said, there's so much happening. An hour before we had this conversation, we started getting high KP, which is, you know, the influx of solar energy. And when you hit anything above 3, so we're at 4 right now, it affects everything. It affects the weather, it affects your mood, it affects your mental state, your health, your physical health, your heart. All of those play an important role in what we're experiencing right now, for the simple fact that everybody's going through something. You know, I've spoken to quite a few people this week, today in particular, where people are experiencing anomalies, right? Changes in the time, changes in the timelines. And that was my main point for today's conversation, was to talk about the timelines, because right now everything's converging. And if you were to envision 2 rivers, right? If you're standing on the bank of a point where 2 rivers converge, there's a lot of bubbling and swirling and, you know, chaos, if you will, in that space, until you get downstream. And once you get downstream, things start to smooth out. And I believe that's where we're headed. Now, if you roll back to what our conversation was, I guess, a year ago today, we talked a lot about how people are being woken up, activated, turned on, whatever your process for naming that experience is. We're starting to see that expand exponentially across the board, across the globe. When you look and you see that everybody's out in the streets, everybody's taking a stand for something, the balance has shifted, right? So in the past, and this is what my observation is, there is a point where this point in history, or this point in the timeline in March, affects everything that happens going forward, depending on where everybody's energy state is. And right now, everybody's energy state is wanting freedom over fear. And that's a really big distinction, because whatever happens next, right? So we talked last year about the importance of March 11th, right? And so whatever event takes place between the 11th and the 16th, you have to say, well, where is the will of the people? Are we being blindly led? Are we being complacent? Are we complying with everything that's being asked of us or told to us? The answer is no. Right now, we're like that bratty little kid, 13, 14 years old, with our arms folded, like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And it's playing out in a much different way than those who would seek to control us would like. And you're seeing that there's a period, just like being a parent, where you realize, I don't have control over my kids right now, you know? And you go through a period where you're sitting around trying to figure out how to take care of it. In the meantime, there's a gap that's being created. That gap is exactly where we're at right now. We have enough distance between us and the bad guys, so to speak, that we're able to affect the timeline. So think of it like driving a car up a hill, right? It's natural, as you are accelerating up the hill, that at a certain point, just before you crest that hill, you take your foot off the gas and you coast over the hill, right? You've transitioned from the gas pedal to the brakes in preparation to maintain control of the vehicle as it goes down the other side of the slope. My point is that gap of cresting the hill and going over the other side is the same as the second hands in a clock, right? So that period between now and midnight, so to speak, nobody's driving, right? So that's the moment where human history is going to be changed forever, because we're at that point now where we're looking around saying nobody's driving and the people are standing up. And you can tell that the people that were supposed to be driving didn't know we were going to do that. And so
Right.
here we are.
Right. You can definitely feel a pause in the, excuse me, you can definitely feel a pause in the momentum. And I've been feeling this for a few months now, a pause in the momentum of the narrative, you know, like you're right. They didn't expect as many people to stand up as have been. And it's wonderful that you brought this up, because this is something that I wanted to share with, like, I feel very compelled, and I've been talking about this for, well, since last year, is sovereignty. There are so, like, I believe with all of these protests, with the convoys, this is a sovereignty activation, and it's very necessary that we humans activate this. It's not just an idea, it's not just a concept, it's a vibration, it's a frequency, and it's actually a code within our DNA that we carry within our DNA. It's a frequency that we carry there, and it's being activated. That's why so many people are standing up and saying enough. This isn't how I want to live life, and joining in unity in that belief, because it is a sovereignty activation, and it's necessary. It's necessary in our state of evolution. So you're right. We have reached the top of that hill. We've taken our foot off of the gas, but I think it was more of those who were driving the narrative. Like, they took their foot off the gas, and we felt the pause, and we were like, wait a minute. And just like you said, we stood up and we're like, wait a minute, no, this isn't how it's supposed to play out in the timeline. So what do you have more you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I'm starting to look at the situations that we're seeing as markers, right? Because everything is cyclical in nature. Everything has a pattern. Everything has a way of realigning itself when the time is right. And the time is right now. What we're seeing, right? Everybody's has to take a step back from it. We talked last year about giving yourself that energetic buffer, right? No different than if you're driving in traffic and people keep hitting the brakes in front of you. To avoid a problem, you might want to give yourself a little bit of gap, right? And so where we're seeing that gap play out is people creating this energetic buffer. So if you were to look at the sun, if you were to look at the planet Earth, right? The magnetic shield that goes around the planet is present within the body, as above, so below. So it emanates from the heart space, and it literally creates like a dome around you that is blocking all of this negative energy. You've created space for yourself, right? As a group, as a collective, we're all doing this right now. We're standing up and we're putting up that energetic buffer and saying, no, I'm not going to accept these mandates. I'm not going to accept this. I'm not going to accept that. And the narrative, the timeline has shifted now to a point where we are creating this narrative. And this is a very important point to make.
Absolutely.
We all co-create everything that we are experiencing right now, both good and bad. And the things that you anchor into, that energy that you anchor into, is creating food. It's a food source, right? It's called Loosh, Loosh.
Right.
And if you analyze what we're being shown, it's all being shown to you through the veil of fear, which creates the highest level of Loosh, right? But it's not taking the same effect. It used to be people would get scared and they would run and hide. They would do what they were told for the greater good, but they realized that the greater good is not being served. And it starts with you, right? If this was a personal attack, right? If a person that you didn't know comes to your door right now and demands to be let in, you're not going to do it, right? So you have to have the same type of discipline when you're being shown these events. And I keep emphasizing shown because that is the distinction, right?
Right.
With this new situation, you can go online and you can look at live streams while they're telling you that all this crazy stuff is happening, and it's not.
Exactly.
And so when you are producing something, you're creating the elements that make a compelling story that is then to be shown to you, right?
Right.
Everything that we experience, we're being shown these things. Again, I keep emphasizing shown to prove a point that we have to train ourselves, live our experiences through the lens of how it is and not as how it's projected to be. The projection is real, and the projection comes in a lot of different fashions. There's a lot of people pointing fingers at everybody else right now, which shows you that they're losing control. And this is not a coincidence that it's happening in March, nor is it a coincidence that there's another war being started in March, right? So there's very important energies that are being thrown around right now, and we have the choice to create with that energy, right? You can call it transmutation, you can call it whatever you want, but the fact is, if you were given a paintbrush in the middle of an artist painting something, you would sit down and start creating. It might not be on the same marker as what the artist was doing, but now you have control of the brush and you can create as you see fit. This is exactly where we are. And it's important for people to pick up that brush and start to project what they want this reality to become. Because consider this, when the world shut down on March 11th, we all did what we were told because we were reacting to what we were shown, right?
Right.
And in that time frame that we spent at home, we were shown a lot of things. But if you were the type of person that decides to pick up that brush, you start to learn different things are actually going on in the background, right? There was a big energetic shift right there where people started to either believe one thing or the other. And it metastasized into where we're at right now, except for you have to look at it like a roundabout, right? On a road where the traffic goes around something or water goes around a boulder. We've now reconvened on the opposite side of whatever that energetic bubble of fear was. And now we're moving on. And the moving on part is, again, the top of that hill.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts?
Well, I wanted to drop in about the sovereignty again. In going with what you're saying, I'm definitely feeling that rejoining. And I love the analogy that you gave of like coming around the boulder, because it was like this big boulder that we all had to maneuver around one way or another, right? And there is a re-coming together, which is coming from an esoteric stance, is very much in alignment with the Aquarian age and the age of unification. We're moving away from that theme, Piscean theme of duality, into the theme of unification. So it's a great analogy and example of that energy, that unifying energy. And there was something that you said that triggered the thought around the sovereignty again. And I may I may talk about sovereignty to ad nauseum, because it's so up in the field. It's like wherever I look, especially with what happened in Canada. And I promised myself that I wasn't going to talk about Ukraine, just because whatever. But even in Ukraine, even with the events happening there, like, so that the sovereignty activation is really up. And bringing through that activation, bringing in that theme of unification. And so I kind of want to take it a little bit further, Alan, and I want to get your take on what we may be seeing on the horizon. now that the narrative that has been driven by the mainstream has taken pause, and we've all gathered, for the most part, people who are awakening to this sovereignty activation and who are becoming unified, no matter on what side of the boulder you came from, if you're anti this or pro that, this is being activated among so many different global populations, including Ukraine. But going and looking at the horizon, what is your take? What is your sense in terms of looking back at the past and looking at all the patterns and what we could see in the remaining part of the year?
Well, it's a complicated answer, but I'll water it as best as I can. So for starters, what everybody is experiencing right now is the end of the timeline, right? And I say the end of the timeline, not in doom and gloom, but because of the use of the word and its applications to what we're experiencing right now, which is apocalypse. People take a negative connotation to that, right? All apocalypse means is the lifting of a veil or the ending of an age. So that's exactly where we're at, right?
Right.
Consider what we're seeing. Never mind what you're being told. Consider what you're seeing with regard to Ukraine, right? So it started off as big mean Russia was moving in to take over sovereign space of Ukraine. And we were being fed this narrative on the pretense that we don't, as Americans or as a global society for that matter, but I will use Americans because our media kind of took the reins on telling the story, that we don't understand the geopolitical importance of Ukraine. And that might be true for many people, but not people like you or I, right? And I say that not to elevate our positions, but just saying that we're the type of person that takes a deeper look into things. We don't just go, oh, well, that's the headlines for today, so let me share that with my many followers. Right, exactly.
Always asking questions.
So the short and sweet of what we're seeing was the sovereign spaces of those two regions of Eastern Ukraine being recognized as sovereign spaces, right? And in order to have recognition of a sovereign space, you need to write a constitution, you need to have a new vote, and you need to make sure that the people are safe to make their decisions, right? This would be no different than if Texas decided today, hey, Biden, I want to secede from the nation, I want to be in my own sovereign space. You would have to call out the National Guard. There would have to be a whole new treaty set up. There would probably be a wall put up or some sort of official border to protect Texas from everybody else that doesn't want a part of that. So putting up the National Guard doesn't mean that the military is moving in on Texas, right? Now, I understand there's actual violence going on, but that's a different topic because there's a lot of nuances that aren't being discussed with any degree of truth. The unification aspect, again, with regards to Poland, for example, right? Poland's taking in millions of people, and they're also being sanctioned by those who don't want them to do so, to do good in the situation. They wanted them to participate in the chaos. I believe it was March 10th that Poland signed its declaration, or not declaration, its constitution, its democratic constitution. It made this is how we're going to do our thing from here on out, documentations. So everything that we're being shown right now is people stepping away from the situation, right? You're being told there's war. NATO hasn't gone in. The United States hasn't gone in. Most of the NATO states in that region haven't gone in. And they're actively saying, no, we don't want a part in this. That's not normal for history. And it's definitely not normal for war, right? You got to look at war for what it is. It's an ability to generate capital, right? But it's going in reverse. It's going in reverse, and it's pushing things at a frantic pace where there are going to be things that you're going to see that are going to be challenging. But again, that still takes the form of the word apocalypse, right? It's the ending of an age. So consider the age that we're in at present, right? We are moving out of our currency, right? The way that we do business has been challenged through activities that we are on our northern border with Canada and them taking people's money from them, right? So that causes a run on the banks. So the banks take a hit, not the people, right? So that's a major institution of war in and of itself. Again, to that whole unification point, look at how everybody came together for that in the cold for 3 weeks. And even when they were faced with violent aggression, they stood their ground and they sang, and they had the unity, not of nationalism, but of the human spirit. You can't break that.
Right. Right.
And even when they had their rights stripped from them, it was taken 24 hours, and there's the sea to Ukraine, right? You see the difference between true unification and narrative-driven unification, right?
Right.
Where were all the people when everything was happening with Canada in terms of leaders, right? And now 3-4 weeks later, we're dealing with the Ukraine thing, and everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got this flag on their face. And they're doing their photo ops for Instagram for the likes. That's not unification, right?
No.
And you can feel that when you see it, and people are rejecting it. Like when you read the comments for some of these things that people are posting, like everybody's like, what are you doing? Why are you even talking like this? What do you know about the situation, really? And that's the collective forming that protective dome that I talked about over everybody, not just yourself. You're now thinking about your fellow human, right?
Totally. Can I just interject right here, just right in alignment with that? And I'm getting this from source. There's actually someone who has really been struggling in what to believe in terms of what's being shown and what's actual truth, especially when it comes to Ukraine. And the message that I'm supposed to give to you is, remember that you can tell a tree by its fruits. Okay, so if you're questioning the source, whether or not someone is telling the truth about current events, especially regarding Ukraine, I'm feeling their sense is that they're really concerned. There's a really deep concern and worry about this situation with Ukraine, and they're really not sure what to believe in the information. So that is the message for you. You can tell a tree by its fruits. Like, look for the fruits in terms of the information. And if it looks valid, if it seems, and use your discernment too. But what I'm seeing, or what I'm sensing and getting in the translation, is look at the fruits. If it's valid and it's fruit, then you can trust that tree of information. Okay, so just had to interject there, Alan, because there is someone who is going to be watching, or is watching now, who's been really struggling with that.
What I'll add to what you just said for that person that you're discussing, whoever that person may be, I will ask you to do this one thing. When something changes in terms of a narrative, and you get that curveball that makes you sit there, and you were probably doing the same thing during COVID, right? Ask yourself this: through the last 2 events that we were just talking about, both Canada and Ukraine, what happened to COVID? So if you're looking for the fruits, sometimes you got to look for the things that are no longer present in the narrative. And if they can change the game that fast, right? Then what was it really? It was a tool, right? It was a yoke. They put it around your neck and they were steering you around, and then there's something different and they pull the yoke a different way. You can remove that yoke by choosing what you want to accept, right? You have to get out of this pattern of accepting the information as it's being thrown at us, because we're getting information thrown at us all over the place, right?
Absolutely.
Rapid fire, everybody's sending you stuff, and you get into the habit of just immediately sharing it without vetting it, without
Right.
validating it. And that's
Exactly.
part of the problem, you know?
Yeah. But I also feel that, or have a sense that this is an avenue that a lot of people are awakening and activating that sovereignty piece within their field, because they are like, COVID was one, but there are a lot of people awakening because of what their experience it was with COVID, that, and in terms of the information around that, this is a whole nother ball game.
Oh,
It's like the
absolutely.
fear level is being amped up, right? There's like all of this like uh information about World War III and all of that, and people, because of their past experience over the last 2 years, they are moving into that area of vetting out the information, and like validating, and that has created an avenue for that sovereignty activation in their field. And that's another way that it's being activated, which is really cool, I think.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. Just randomly today, because I was listening to a lot of things that kind of set my mind right for this conversation today. And randomly, I caught a video with Corey Good, right? And I haven't really been listening to him much lately because something happened and he got all doom and gloom, and this is over, and we're all gonna die. The solar flash is gonna happen, all this stuff. Anyway, he touched on something really interesting in that. He said that in previous timelines on other planets, they had to go through the same situation where they were standing by waiting for someone to swoop down from the sky and save them, right? And at a certain point, they took matters into their own hands. They unified as a group, and they stood up to their oppressors. And in the process of standing up, what he was expressing was that those who were holding them hostage, so to speak, once they were no longer being fed by the loosh created by these hellish conditions that the people were living under, they went into a narcoleptic state where it was almost like hibernation. They just kind of fell out, and it only took a couple of days, right? Hold that up against what you're seeing right now, right? The powers that be seemingly don't have any power anymore, right? We've taken it back. There's enough people standing up right now that just that action alone is waking people up.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. You were correct. We are driving the narrative. The energy.
I think that for those who are confused, I don't even want to use the word confused, for those who are on the fence about whether or not things are going in our favor, I always point back to the highest optimal timeline. The highest optimal timeline is for the greatest good of humanity, right? You have to earn that slot. You have to walk as a group towards that destination. But consider the fact that we are in this highest optimal timeline for the simple fact that look how fast the narrative gets shot down. Look how fast people's lies get pulled out into the open, how quickly karma is working, right? All of these things would not be in play at all if we weren't in the highest optimal timeline. You'd be sitting in a camp somewhere. That's real, and even you look at Australia, right? And New Zealand. These were places that we were like, oh God, please don't let that happen here, right? But where was the national outcries then? Where was the people with Australian flags on their face on YouTube and Instagram? My point is this: quietly, they have been working their way out of that problem, right? It's not being advertised. And why would they? Because that was their benchmark. That was their high watermark for this is where we're going. And eventually everybody will be there. Now you're seeing that the whole game plan is deteriorating. The house of cards is collapsing, and you're watching it happen in real time. And this is where things get important. Your energy, your attention is your meal ticket, right? And when you go to a movie theater with your money and you buy a ticket for a movie, you're going to go and experience that movie, whether it's a good movie or a bad movie, but you have a choice, right? Whether or not you want to waste your time and your energy investing in that experience. And we have collectively made the decision to no longer buy those tickets to that fear show, right? And look around. The things that, I mean, look at Hollywood, right? Where's Hollywood? Hollywood used to pump out movies all the time. And now they're taking those idols and they're putting them up on commercials trying to get you to watch a Netflix, or you wouldn't have to use celebrities to get us to come back. They're like, hey, remember me? Come on in.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. And so, everything is changing, and it's changing for the better. And that's my point, is you're seeing all of those fence posts get removed. You were being kept in a little cage and being fed the bread and circus that they've always given you of, here's the new football team, and here's the new movie, here's the new iPhone, and we don't care anymore, right? It's over. People didn't need the CDC or the WHO or the NIH or Fauci or any of these people to tell us that COVID was over. We looked around and we're like, you know what? I think I'm good.
It's been over for so long.
Pick up and you move on. Yes, it has. But see, that's my point. You have to accept that narrative versus the other narrative, right? Because you can stay in this forever if you want. There's still, when they say officially this is done and all of the people get hauled up in front of the Hague or wherever they go, there's still going to be people wearing masks.
Yeah, totally.
And that's okay.
Today, I live in Oregon, and today is the end of the mask mandate for the state of Oregon. We're one of the last states in the United States to end the mandates. And I believe it's today. I believe it's the 10th that they're ending. And I still was walking down the street and there's still people wearing masks. And I'm like, and you can still, even though these documents regarding the shots with Pfizer have come out and they've disclosed like all of the side effects and all of that, they're still advertising like, get your vaccine.
Here's something interesting about Pfizer.
You guys, it's still out there available. That belief structure is still out there and available to those who, and at the same time, I jest about it, but at the same time, I have so much respect and honor for souls who have chosen that path, because even though they choose a different path, they are part of this ascension process just as much as those who have awakened.
Yep.
Very much so. They've just chosen a different way of being, and their soul signed up for that, and that's what they're here for. And I feel so much gratitude and respect and honor towards them for choosing that, because it is helping, it's adding to the whole state of evolution in human consciousness. So yeah, there's that.
You cannot judge a person for their path. You can't, right? Because that simply causes more division. Now, it's important to make an earmark in that statement of division in terms of how it's used normally and how we're perceiving that division, right? Everything needs balance. You can't have everybody's this way or everybody's that way. You have to have balance. So there's duality in everything. And so this physical, visual divide of mask, no masks, vax pass, no vax pass, all that stuff. You can't have one without the other, because there's no juxtaposition for you to make an educated decision. That was the biggest problem. They wanted everybody to take the shot, and it didn't happen. And remember, I said there was a window, an energetic window that was coming up, and they were rushing to make that happen, right? Totally. And it was obvious at a certain point that they were rushing to make that happen because they were going to run out of time, and whatever they had planned wasn't going to work out the same way, right? magically they abandoned one thing and sloosh that was going to be presented with this new oh no moment, right? Canada wasn't supposed to be broadcast the way it was, right? That was supposed to be very much a quiet in-house thing where they were just going to step on everybody and then you would just hear about it through mainstream media. But because of the way the internet is now, there were so many people that were showing the truth in real time. So it couldn't be, it couldn't take root in the psyche of the collective. You couldn't say, oh my God, I had no idea that Canada was happening, because everybody saw it, you know?
Right.
Same thing with Ukraine, right? Everybody's hearing about it and they're doing their due diligence now because they realize that the powers that be that push all that information through your television set aren't being straight up with you at all. And, you know, the level that they're going to try to confuse or to hype up a situation that's not even happening by using old footage or video game footage or, you know, flak jackets and helmets, but there's people behind you taking selfies. If you have to go to that, then what do you have left? Right.
Right.
And so you instead of looking at how bad things are, start looking at how good things are going for us right now. You know, again, you're not driving down the street with military checkpoints on every corner, right? You asked me where I think this is going, and here it is. There is going to be a reckoning of global government, right? Everybody's being exposed right now, and the things that are going to come out are going to be difficult for the world to handle, but more importantly for the people right here in the United States, right? Consider this. With the sanctions that were put on Russia, right? Everybody wants to take sides and says that, you know, this is what I believe and these people are bad. Consider this, right? The sanctions that were put on Russia, and they were heavy, don't hit the high level politicians like you would think that they would. People misunderstand sanctions sometimes, I think, because the people of Russia, and if you go back 10, 15, 20 years and remember what the fallen USSR looked like and everybody being down on their luck and out of money, that's right back in the public eye, right? Now, imagine if the information that's coming out about the true reasons why we're worried about the Ukraine come out. How much the world would sanction us, right? So I see this as a pathway towards a necessary end of something, right? I said it before, you will lose the internet as you know it. You will lose the dollar. You will lose the system that is the United States as we know it, right? It's already dying. You're seeing it happen. You're looking around and going, what's happened to this country? The country was not a country. It was a company. And when the company goes bankrupt, you start seeing a lot of empty cubicles. You start seeing people boxing up stuff and looking for somewhere else to go. You're going to lose the dollar. That's what's going to happen. Right. The dollar is already being pushed into non-existence with people dropping it. And now you're talking about sanctions on oil and natural gas. That's the petrodollar you're talking about. Right. So look at how everybody's clamoring about cryptocurrencies. Right. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Bitcoin or whatever. Cryptocurrency is cryptocurrency. Right. Consider this. Their game plan is to push all cryptocurrencies into a state where they don't have any trust, right? They're not regulated. And so they're going to try to outlaw it. They're going to ban it, especially Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the one everybody's buying up. Countries are using it. So they'll ban it. And then everybody will get mad. How dare you take my money from me? And then they'll say, all right. We're not going to use Bitcoin, but we're going to introduce our own digital currency that is the problem right there. They're driving you to this problem solution, right? They always do this. So right now they're confusing you and they're giving you a new narrative by saying, because of this war and because of everything that's happening, we now have problems at the pump. And the petrodollar is the reason for that. And so to protect you, the citizen, we're going to offer you a brand new system, right? In guerrilla warfare, you use the existing infrastructure of the army that you're fighting, right? And so I always said that when the big shift happens and the cleaver goes down and we lose a part of the system, or we lose the system as a whole globally, that there's going to be this period of jockeying for the new answer. I have a theory about where this is going to go. And the theory is simple, right? By the time that the government, our government, offers you this new cryptocurrency, you're not going to want it. You're not going to trust it. You're going to see that they've destroyed the dollar, they've destroyed the country, they've destroyed the economy of the world.
Mm-hmm.
We want something new, right? Pfizer. And I haven't found too much information to back this up, but it looks like Pfizer delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. Now let that sink in. Pfizer made $6.4 billion last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The CEO of Pfizer made $21 million. Now, why would a company that has A, paid the largest lawsuits in history, and B, made the most money in 1 year in history, why would they be taken off of the New York Stock Exchange? There are pillars of this system that we live under globally, and one of the last pillars that's going to have to fall is going to be Wall Street, right? And people will say, oh no, well, all my money's tied up in Wall Street. The dollar's dead anyway, right? So just consider that as this is what happens. Because in the grand scheme of things, if you lose the dollar at any point, if there's any type of economic hardship, they have to reinstitute the system. Now, who's got the levers? It's not going to be the bad guys this time, right? So that means that there's, in that guerrilla warfare thing I was talking about, there's going to be a system that looks very similar to it that is in the public's best interest, right? The IRS is not a legal body. It's not even in the United States. It's based outside of the United States. So how do they get to manage what you do with your money? Tax you for it. Taxation without representation. We're living through it with the inflation, you know, and all. So everything that I'm saying is that we're going to lose that, but you're going to be replaced with something better, much better. It's been said before by me that, you know, when you're born, your birth certificate is actually or not your birth certificate, but your social security number is a bank account, right? You're worth $2.5 million.
Your birth certificate is like your stock.
Yeah.
Is your stock.
Right. And it's traded. Your essence, literally your essence is traded. And that is a big issue that we're dealing with on the surface level, not the energetic level, but the surface level of human trafficking. Same thing, right? They're making money off of we the people. And at a certain point, when that gets exposed, and it is, then you have to recoup your losses. And that's where this new monetary system comes into play, because you're no longer talking about the taxes. You're no longer talking about the overvalue of things like your home and your cars and all the other commodities that you were just constantly stepping up. Like, how much did you spend in groceries this week?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
The point that has to, everything that's negative about the forward. And so that goes for everything else. So there's been a revaluation of currencies happening around the world quietly while we're looking over this way. There's something else happening over here, always. And so it's important when you get these events that take your eyes off of the ball, that you just reassign that attention, because where your awareness goes is where your power goes. They want you to give your power to this other situation, but that's not where it should be. And you feel that in the collective. People are aware of it, but they're not hanging on it. You know, it's not like Dancing with the Stars where everybody's sitting around staring at it. People have found other things to do with their time and their energy. That's not to say that the suffering that's happening there is irrelevant. That's a very Western outlook to say, it's not happening here, but who's to say it won't, right? There's a power struggle happening, and there's people at the top being removed. And we got a lot of those types of people right here on our own soil. And so it stands to reason that eventually those same types of actions will have to happen here. And at that time, you'll have a sit down. A sit down where you're shown exactly what's been happening around the world and who's been responsible. And in that period, there's going to be checkpoints that I talk about, because you can't do that in a state where they're not exacerbated. Now, that our government created COVID. We've been told for the last 3 years it was somebody else. Consider how that would look to the world, first of all. And then to find out that everything that we've been going through, all the things that we've been dealing with as a collective, as a human species, now you got a common enemy and all the people are aligned and by to make everybody sit down, right? So the military will come in and then you have a complete flushing of the government. You have a complete revaluation of the currency. You have a change in everything, but you'll have a whole new vote. And that vote will be just like it's happening overseas. It will be monitored by the military to make sure that every man, woman, and child, or if you're old enough to vote, can do so safely and legally, and that there's no, games being played. And that's going to take about 120 days. Mm-hmm. So think about what that does to the collective when everybody's put on the same frequency. It's like a tuning fork, right?
Right.
Your tuning fork, as soon as you make that contact with something, you hit that, you strike that with something, that event causes that entire tuning fork to take the same frequency at once. Mm-hmm. This is the event. This is what's hitting us and going ding, and everybody snaps to that same frequency. And now you all are seeing clearly. Now the decisions that you make within that time frame that frequency is active at its peak, that's where that change happens. And we're in that flux right now. So keep your attention and your awareness on the things that continue to serve the collective, not yourself. It's not about climbing the ladder. It's not about buying a new car, because all of that stuff's going to change real soon, right?
That's all the old paradigm and the old way of being, which I love that you brought all of this up, because this dovetails, and we're getting close to time, but this dovetails with something that I wanted to share about. I think that, going back to what you were saying earlier about the amplification from one event to another, and it's like they're turning it up, they're turning up the fear factor in order to hopefully gain control, and ultimately they know that they are losing control. They've seen it through Project Looking Glass. They know that their time is limited, and the reason why they keep amping up these events is to maintain what little control that they do have in order to prolong their timeline. Even though their timeline isn't, it does exist, but they're trying to avoid the inevitability of the higher timeline, right? But I think that we saw the what happened with Australia, and then the next was like with Canada. It was very reminiscent of that same energy, right? But it was compacted in terms of, it was amplified. The energy was amplified from those trying to gain control, but also it was, it happened very fast, a lot quicker than what we saw in Australia. And now we're seeing that with Ukraine, and you were right. Like, it's happening very fast. Like, that narrative is being invalidated, like, very quickly. Quicker than it happened with Australia, right? For weeks it went on in Australia, where people were just like sitting going, and we're kind of like awestruck in what was happening.
Right.
Same with Canada, but it happened very quickly. And now with Ukraine, again, we're all just kind of awestruck at what's happening, what we're being shown, right? And what I sense is, in that threat of World War III is that narrative that we've been shown. My sense is that the next amplified event is going to be a false flag around open contact. I don't think that open contact is going to happen. My sense is that it's going to happen in Europe somewhere, because and collectively the overall collective vibration in Europe is more open. They're more accepting of that sort of thing, open contact. Americans still, as a collective, as a nation, we still hold this frequency of disbelief and ridicule around that. It is getting more so where there's more people beginning to open up their awareness to that, with the Pentagon finally releasing those documents. But open contact is inevitable, you guys. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And I think this is another reason why the sovereignty activation is spreading like wildfire. And I'm talking on an energy sense, because we have to have that activated with our fields in order to interact with these other civilizations in our galaxy and beyond. But I think that open contact will be happening. My sense is in Europe, but there's going to be two narratives fed to us, shown to us. One that goes along with what we've been seeing in the media, in regards to Australia and Canada and Ukraine now, and then what's actually happening. Okay. What is that saying? The revolution will not be televised.
Absolutely true.
The open contact will not be televised on that mainstream. What we will see is a completely different story there. And that is to create that loosh that you spoke of, because there are people who will be more inclined, and again, their soul chose this path in this lifetime, and they will choose to have that experience. And that that is what I am sensing in the field. And I can sense it among the forces who are planning that sort of false flag. If it were to happen this year, it's like they want it to happen because they know their time is short. But if they try to make it happen this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try to make it happen, it's like they're not fully prepared to. Like there's still some preparation that they need, but it's like they are nervous. It's like they know their time is short and they're trying to hurry up and get everything ready to do it, but it would be better for them to wait until next year.
I don't think they have that option anymore, to be honest with you.
No. So it's like there's this unpreparedness that I'm sensing in the field in that way. But put that aside, those people who are ready to they're choosing that path, that experience of open contact in its truest nature, because the open contact will not be an act of war. That is,
it'll be rendered inert at that point.
I'm sorry, say again.
That the concept of war as it pertains to first contact would be rendered inert, and you're seeing it happening now, because all attempts to kickstart World War III are failing, and they're failing in a miserable way.
But that is still going to be what we are shown from that other.
Here's my take on this whole thing. So we've had this conversation quite a few times on contact, right? And the last time that we had this conversation about contact, my sense was that, as you said, collectively, we're just not there, because the mental trajectory is fear and, we're being invaded and all of these things. you know, occupation, pick a buzzword that they would use, and
Right,
that's be
right.
how it plays out. But
Exactly.
it's funny that you said Europe, right? Uh, there was a time, and I spoke about this on previous lives, where I was having a channeling, and in this channel, I was shown the event, the Great Solar Flash, and the impact point was right over England and Portugal, right? And there was a moment where you saw all of the after effects of the event on the physical plane,
Mm.
and then afterwards, all of these ships drop down, render aid to people, right? So the disclosure as it is now, soft disclosure. And this is something I'm going to learn about all the things that are really happening in the world. I'm like, it's already happening. Like, truth is out there. It's not going to come from television, but you can go find the truth pretty easily. But as it comes to contact, it's also already happening, right?
Oh,
There's
totally.
people around you all the time that are having experiences in their
Absolutely.
dreaming life, and they're just not tying that to what their experience is. They're just, it's outside of their range of comprehension. So they're not assuming that that's what it is. Your abilities, the things that we call, you know, being activated, that's coming from higher source as well, right?
Mm.
Who or what that source is, it is up for discussion. But at the same point, you have to take into account that real things are happening that weren't present in you before. Like you've said, previous lives, like, I'm not the same person I was a week ago, but you also had experiences within that time frame that may or may not have manifested them as contact, but you now realize I can do things, or I understand things at a level that I didn't used to on a human level before. So all of these things are happening around you. It's just a matter of how are you interpreting it. And
Right.
who's to say that what your interpretation is right or wrong? Consider this. The same groups of people that would say there's absolutely no way that I can look out my window and ever see a UFO or an alien in my backyard will say that they've had spiritual experiences, right? They've seen ghosts, they've heard voices from angels, you know, they're ready for the rapture. They believe that the clouds will part and Jesus will come down. Like, those are the same types of events. I mean, like, let's be honest. And so it really just comes down to, what do you want it to be?
Right. Yeah, it's true. And which leads me to I love how our conversation flows and
Mm-hmm.
dovetails together, which leads me to what I feel so very passionate about. And this is what I was getting at, is exactly what you said. How do you want to experience this open contact with these other beings? It's inevitable that humans are going to be stepping up into this role of galactic citizenship. We are.
But
It's not a matter of if, it's when.
it
When
happens
and
after the event.
are we ready? Alan, you're exactly right. People are already having these experiences, and there is going to be a very broad scale global experience that we're all going to witness together, just like we witnessed the pandemic, just like we're witnessing Ukraine and the events around that. We're going to all witness this together. And it's, how do you want to experience this? And if you want to experience it from a place of sovereignty and truth, then I encourage you do whatever you resonate with to empower yourself in that regard. Because, my friend, we think we saw the world being shaken by a pandemic. Going right back to your analogy with the river,
Yep.
it's like we're going to be standing right there where those rivers join together again, and in
Mm-hmm.
with this event, and there is going to be a lot of chaos, a lot of chaos. And so yeah, if you want to experience this in a empowered, positive way, I encourage you to do what
it's
you need
all
to
about your
do to
energy.
get ready, because it's coming. It's coming.
Yeah. It's all about your energy right now. Everything
Totally.
is, you know,
Totally.
at this stage
Absolutely.
of the game, you got to see it for what it is and understand that it starts with you, right? If you want
Absolutely.
change, it starts with you. And if you were to consider whatever the circumstances in your mind are, right? Whether it's World War III, whether it's a nuclear event, whether it's peace on earth and everybody's, you know, happy after all the bad guys get dusted up, it doesn't really matter how you are experiencing it. It matters about the energy that you bring to that situation. And if your energy is one of fear, it's going to be hard for you because you're going to manifest whatever you're afraid of. It's like being a kid, right? When you're a kid and you see a shadow or you think there's a monster under your bed, it's going to become real to you. You're going to freak out every time the lights go out. But if you're the type of person who's like, no, you know, I'm prayed up tonight. I'm good. I'm gonna go to sleep. I'm going to bed grateful. Somebody shared something with me, and I think that this would be a good tap out point. Somebody shared something with me that says that every night that they go to bed, they say, "I intend to wake up in the highest optimal timeline." Right? And then when you wake up in the morning, the very first thing you say is, "I am now awake in the highest optimal timeline." And they said to do this for 3 weeks and watch how your life changes. I've been doing it for a really long time, but I challenge everybody that's watching this to just give it a shot because you're setting your intentions, right? It's like saying, I'm going to have a great weekend. Nobody says I'm going to have a great Monday, but yeah, I'm going to have a great weekend. I'm going to do so many nice things. And you end up having a lot of stories to tell about all the fun you had, right? You set the intention. Do the same thing for your life every day towards the greatest good for humanity. As long as you put those two things together, I'm in the highest optimal timeline for the greatest good of humanity. If you can do that genuinely, honestly, look around and look at what you see. You'll see life completely different.
Totally.
We create this space that we're all living in. And we're creating a new avenue for peace and a brand new way forward. And it's right at the end of an age. So happy apocalypse, everybody.
I love it. Happy apocalypse. Oh, that was so wonderful. Well, we're just going to end on that note.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alan. This was just a pleasure as always.
I always enjoy it. Thank you for
All right.
having me.
Thank you. Bye now.